Guy Herbert has worked in one phase of publishing or another for over a quarter of a century. He is currently a business affairs consultant covering computer games and conventional literary and film properties. Although he ran for Parliament in 1992 as a Green candidate, he refers to himself as a Tory anarchist. He writes for both the well-known blog Sammy's Data and The Guardian's Comment is Free. Guy is the CEO and General Secretary of No2ID, an activist organization seeking to staunch the growth of the Big Brother surveillance society. Guy Herbert, it is my sincere pleasure to welcome you to the Global Freedom Report.
Good evening. Well, it's evening here anyway.
Yeah, well, actually, it's evening where you are. It's tomorrow where I am, and I think it's evening over where the studio is also. This genuinely is a global show. I got to say, I see your name a lot in stories surrounding surveillance activities in Britain. I almost think I already know you, and I'm just getting to know you here.
Well, I'm flattered.
I know what a true anarchist is, but what is a Tory anarchist? Keep in mind, our American audience probably does not know a lot about British political parties.
Right. Well, the Tory party is the name for the traditionalist party in this country. The official name of it is the Conservative Party. But Tory is somebody who respects the authority of tradition. But a Tory anarchist is somebody who respects that authority but is nonetheless skeptical about it.
Oh, excellent. No, that's great, because, again, I would not have known that either. I know a lot of people wouldn't. What exactly is England? And what I mean by that is England is a monarchy. The royal family probably considers it to be the monarchy. However, it does have a parliament. The mayor of London wields a great deal of power, as does the prime minister. The people have been taught to think of themselves as subjects. So what exactly is England?
Well, England, or the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, is probably the world's purest democracy in one sense, in that our parliament, once elected, is completely unbound by anything other than its own conventions. So we do have a queen, but the queen always does what the prime minister recommends.
Is that simply because it's politically appropriate? I mean, does the queen have the authority to come in? I know, for example, in New Zealand, where I am right now, they have a constitutional monarchy in which the parliament does all the legislative everything, but there are some procedures that require the stamp of approval from the crown.
Indeed, and it's precisely the same system. After all, it's the same queen in this country.
So do the people think...
She's Queen of New Zealand as well.
So how do the people think of themselves, in the 21st century? Do they think of themselves as subjects of the Queen? Do they think of themselves as citizens of a country in which they have a fair say? What's the mindset of the ordinary Brit?
That's difficult to define. I mean, I think that people think of themselves as citizens of a country in which they have a say. I mean, since 1981, we have officially been British citizens. British subject is a historical category which applies to people who are not citizens as well as citizens. Anybody who is under the authority of the crown is a citizen, is a subject, whether they're a citizen or not.
So, okay, so I'm still remain a little confused. I've just been curious how the British people think of themselves, these days, because we always hear about the stiff upper lip and never object to anything, just go along with whatever's going on because it's a civilized thing to do. That's the impression a lot of us get about the British people. But now it seems like there are rumblings. There are people starting to make noise over there.
Well, there's always been rumblings. There's at the same time as there's always been a good deal of complacency. I mean, we had our own civil war. We had a civil war over the authority of Parliament as against the king back in the 17th century. And we have, over the years, had all sorts of democratic and people's movements to change things in one way or another. But it's a very complacent society at the moment, very complacent indeed.
It sounds, in that respect, a great deal like the United States. Do you believe having people watching over everyone in your community by surveillance cameras makes you safer?
Of course not. I believe it makes you more frightened, and government research conducted in this country, or research conducted on behalf of the government in this country, illustrated exactly that. The Home Office, which is our Ministry of Interior, our disciplinary department, spent several £million on research from the Scarman Institute of Criminology to discover how effective CCTV was, and they discovered that it had almost no effect on crime, but a great deal of effect on people's awareness of crime. The insidious shadow of the CCTV camera in the background reminds you that there might be something to be frightened of.
You know, it's something I have never been able to understand. We all know that the UK is just stuffed full of these cameras. According to a recent study conducted in the city of Cheshire and then extrapolated to encompass the entire country, the UK has one surveillance camera for every 32 people. Now, by any standard, isn't that overkill? I mean, why under any set of circumstances would it be necessary or even desirable to have so many CCTV cameras? And my question is, how has it been justified getting to this current extreme level of surveillance? I would think that the MPs coming out, how do they justify? You've already got so many. 32 people per camera?
It's not a single body that's doing this. It's not a central government initiative. A great deal of it is promoted by local police forces, by local government, and it is popular. There's a kind of vicious circle that arises. People fear crime. They think CCTV helps to solve crime. They install more CCTV. The CCTV makes them more aware of crime, and that makes them fear and demand more CCTV. The thing is that it's a very good thing for providing narrative, for providing story. So many people see clips on TV from CCTV cameras of incidents of one sort or another, and they think that they're learning something from that. But they're not. All they're doing is they're constructing a story or illustrating a story that they're being told about the world in general. CCTV doesn't actually tell you very much. It doesn't solve very many crimes.
What you've just described is the clinical definition of insanity, where you do something expecting a result, getting a different result, and you continue doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the result you're not getting.
Well, save that there's a false interpretation in the middle of that loop, because people don't recognize that they're not getting the result they're expecting. They interpret the wrong result as what they wanted it in the first place.
Which, yeah, then the whole argument breaks down at that point. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Didn't the British government recently start burning ID cards and closing down one of their ID schemes? I love that they call them schemes.
Right. Well, yes, that's our great victory. The British Home Office, our wonderful department, we might call it Department of Surveillance, really, has for decades been trying to persuade successive governments to adopt a national identity scheme and a national identity register, so that every human being in the country would have to be registered and have a card with their details on them. This was put into place by Tony Blair's government. It was the scheme was begun. And No to ID was in fact formed to stop that. And the new government that we have now has triumphantly halted that scheme, deleted the data that had been collected, and destroyed the hard disks on which the data had been collected. But that is a small victory for us.
I have to say, I really love the use of the word scheme, and I'm not sure if it's intended, but scheme, under the American use of the word, has an implication of underhanded, nefarious activity.
Absolutely, and that's why we insisted on calling it the National Identity Scheme. Very important if you're going to campaign on these issues to control the language.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
The Home Office realised they were going down a wrong route and fairly quickly tried to relabel it the National Identity Service, with the idea that it was in the service of the people. But that never stuck, I'm very glad to say.
Yeah, that's like in America, the Internal Revenue Service. Yes, in service to the people. What is the proposed National Identity Management System scheme?
Well, the original proposal was that each person in the country would be obliged. We can talk about it later, how the scheme was described as voluntary, but nonetheless would have been effectively compulsory. Each person would have been obliged to register with the Home Office their fingerprints and a picture and their personal details, up to 50 categories of personal details, and then throughout their lives to keep those details updated. And that would have been a central source of information for government departments on each individual in the country.
Now, do you really believe that the government's given up on that? I mean, I didn't see it, but I understand your census forms were very intrusive.
Indeed they were. In fact, they are, because our census is a year behind the US Census. So our census forms are just being delivered to homes as we speak. Now, no, the answer is that Whitehall, our civil service, has not given up on the idea of tracking data in the mass and collecting information on the public and using that to manage our lives for us. The present generation of politicians, the new government, seem to understand a bit of what the problem with this is, which the previous one didn't. But I certainly don't think that the permanent administration has given up at all. Do
MPs ever address privacy concerns with more than just lip service?